is 19 years old, and he is on the autistic spectrum. I would consider my brother between mild and severe. He's an amazing individual and is my only brother, you know, the love of my life. My mother, Nana Tedola, who is also involved in this project, aka we call her Superwoman. You know, she spoke about him very briefly yesterday, and you know, she's truly a pro. I've actually told her to write a book. But I commend everything she does. She's the reason that I've been able to learn and grow within that ecosystem. I am in no case a specialist in terms of technicalities, and that's why, you know, the Ziba Foundation has so many varied individuals that have expertise in nutrition, in training, in mechanisms, communication. But what I can tell you is I've been affected by my brother. I am simply an older sister who just wants the best for my brother. And today I'll be talking about my personal experiences with autism and how it has truly impacted my own life. So before we get into all the details, does everyone actually understand, or rather have an idea to them, what autism is? Put your hand up if you do. Great, so we all have an idea. Now, what I've learned, especially from yesterday's panel, which was phenomenal, is that autism is actually relative, because the spectrum is so wide. You know, autism may mean one thing to you and one thing to me. And all our experiences vary. Like I said, there's different experiences. For me, I will speak for myself. Autism is my brother Fewa, and he has a complex but a very special condition. So Fewa has unique social skills, he has some repetitive behaviors, and also non-verbal communication. We mustn't forget that no autistic individual is the same. We all know that they're different. Just as us, all of us, we're all different in our own way. That is why autism is a spectrum, and it's not just one thing. You know, we mustn't put things into boxes. We must be flexible. We must also adapt to different environments. So, quick pause. Let's look at the Ziba Foundation logo. Show of hands, does anyone know why it's a puzzle? Anyone know? We have ideas? Yes. Okay, so I'm actually good for something. I can explain why. So it's a puzzle because the pattern actually reflects the complexity of the spectrum. And several organizations in autism actually have one puzzle. I believe the Ziba Foundation have decided to portray different puzzles because of the diversity of people, and also obviously the complexity of autism. The different colors as well represent the shapes of different people and also the families living with that condition. So I do know a little something. Now, I would love to tell you guys that I've always known these things, that I've always been what I were, but I would be lying to you. It is a journey. That is what we all share in common. You know, just from being here, and I'm sure spending time with you, I will learn more and more. So let's remember to keep an open mind, and let's not be hard on ourselves. We are learning as we go on. Also, I think it's very important that, you know, we all are able to be open with ourselves and be honest. You know, I'm definitely outside my comfort zone. You know, as someone mentioned, mixing would have been easier, dancing would have been easier, but I think it's important to have the opportunity to push the envelope and put ourselves in situations where we can learn. That's all I can really emphasize today. Like I said, I'm not a professional in the complexities of autism, but I can tell you that my brother is very special to me, and I will do anything to make the world better for him. And I think that's really important. So if there's one thing you learned from DJ Copy today, I think you should learn that everyone deserves to be loved equally. Now, my emotions regarding my brother and my feelings about his condition have not always been smooth and rosy. You know, when Fewa was 3 years old is when we found out he had autism. And accepting autism was very hard on my family, and it was heartbreaking. I remember just feeling like, what caused this autism? What did we do wrong? Is it something that we could have avoided? Did I not talk to him enough? Was I not helpful enough? What can we do to fix it? And now, 16 years later, my family and I have accepted the fact that, yes, there may be some factors associated with autism, but the exact cause and cure still remains unknown. And no one is at fault. The worst part for me about autism, I think, is the byproducts that come with it. There's sometimes tension in my family, there's pity from outsiders, there's financial strain. You know, I have so many memories of wondering, going to therapy sessions, speaking to teachers, speaking to people like yourself, saying, why can't we solve things? Why can't we heal my brother? Over the years, we've been to so many specialists around the globe, and honestly, one person says do this, one person says no, do that. Is Fewa supposed to be gluten-free? What's he supposed to eat? How do we react when he's having a fit? All these questions really start to get to your mind. And you know, I was saying to one of the doctors here at the Zebra Foundation that I actually started to develop anxiety because I didn't know how to deal with the situation. And so we are all deeply affected. To make things even more complicated, there have been, obviously, in our country, various misconceptions and myths about autism, which are actually quite offensive and insensitive. And sometimes I didn't even want my brother to come to Nigeria, which is our home, because I felt like I couldn't protect him. Now, as much as I want to talk about the negative, we cannot really blame people for thinking this way about autism because they have not been properly educated. And everyone in this room is taking the first step to getting educated. That's why I'm so excited about what the Zebra Foundation is doing. The Zebra Foundation is not pointing fingers. We're actually celebrating the fact that there is an appetite and a necessity for us to educate ourselves. So already we're taking a step forward, which is great. Now for me, I feel like the Zebra Foundation is a crusade, and I can see this collective, this meeting, this celebration of these individuals. I can see things growing and getting better, but that can only happen if we do what we can as individuals. In my family, what we've done with my brother Fewa has been a lot of learning on the job. You know, I think again, approach is so important. We will be here learning about what we can do, but I think it's very important to be flexible, to be open-minded, and not be too hard on yourself. I have made mistakes with my brother. I've also had to learn, and I've learned from him as well. You can only learn and pick up patterns by spending time with individuals with autism. What we've done as a family, my family, is we've paid closer attention to his every need, and we've been extra patient with him and ourselves. It's okay if he has a bad day, he will have good days to come. We mustn't think that we mustn't think that if something doesn't go according to plan, that's the end. If we did think that way, then we all wouldn't be here now. So we must keep a positive attitude. And that's what I've learned from my autistic brother. Positivity is everything. So when it comes to helping Fewa, I give him the extra care he needs. And I've always had patience with even the most simple tasks. With consistent care and treatment, Fewa has grown now at 19 years old to be more independent. And I want to emphasize to everyone in this room that every autistic child needs as much love from family and caregivers as they need treatment. So love, care, and attention goes a far way. As a sister to Fewa, that's where I come in. In between my travels as a DJ and my shakuing and everything, it is my duty to show love to my brother, authentic love. I talk to my brother about what I do. I talk to my brother about my world. I share my love for music and passion. I share my passion and love for music with my brother. And I make sure I am a constant presence in his life. We all know children with autism are highly observant. They notice everything. As our founder, Mr. Ogwe, informed us yesterday, autistic children can even crack into phones, so be aware. This could also be a very helpful skill set, of course, but I didn't say that. Honestly, my main message to everyone here is genuine love and care, as well as, of course, treatment. So I'm coming from a very emotive place. as I'm not a specialist, but I'm someone that loves my brother unconditionally. And that is as simple as it is. Nothing more, nothing less. I know that my brother will be proud of me sitting here speaking to you. This here is a reflection of the love I have for my brother. And I hope this simple message of just love and authentic care is going to help loved ones realize that they are not alone. Help is available from the Zebra Foundation, but also it's about taking each day as it comes. Love can mean anything, from spending time to being in this room, getting yourself educated and informed. I personally, as DJ Copy, I'm going to continue this fight because my brother deserves all the love he can get. And I think the future for autism in Nigeria should and must be brighter and better. We have already taken a step forward in all being here today. And now I beg you to walk along the Zebra Foundation, this amazing organization dedicated to encouraging and educating people with autism in Nigeria. So let's please do what we can to join this mighty movement. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Let's talk about some potential challenges for children with autism during the pandemic. You know, I have actually been in my parent support group. We've been working together since mid-March, and I've been able to really gather a lot of information about some of the things that have been interfering with our children and how it might be a little bit different for children on the spectrum. But one thing is increase of problem behaviors, increase of anxiety and stress, scheduling of therapies. You know, a lot of the children already have, you know, a couple different therapies that they're, you know, had before the pandemic. So now we have to try to schedule them during these times where we're using more telehealth and teletherapy. Access to outdoors. A lot of our kids do well with exercise and getting outside, but now that we need to kind of social distance and really, you know, might have to stay indoors a little bit more, that actually has really been affecting a lot of the children that we work with. Excuse me, maintaining a routine. Very hard to do when you're stuck inside all day. So that also became a challenge for a lot of my families that I've been working with. Virtual learning. Lots of barriers there. We'll get more into that as well. Difficulty understanding. A lot of them just don't understand what's going on right now, and that's a lot has to do with the language, the communication barriers that we have with children with autism. They don't really fully comprehend why they need to wear a mask or why they need to stay inside. Some of my families have reported a regression of skills. Some of my families reported they need additional supervision. You know, it's very hard to try to work and stay at home, and they don't have enough hands and resources at home in order to really properly help their children. Establishing new rules. You know, things are changing. So being able to establish new rules and really understand why we need to change what we're used to do and what they're used to doing. Competing responsibilities, so, you know, working, cooking, cleaning, you know, all those things, as well as being a teacher now at home for parents, and even for teachers and caregivers. You know, I know you have other jobs and you might have children of your own, so it is a lot to kind of have all those competing responsibilities and trying to do the best that you can for our kids. Delaying communication, constant barrier for our children, and then a lack of resources, which, you know, I have seen a lot with a lot of my kids here in the States as well. This study actually showed that COVID-19 has actually really disrupted therapies and services for children on the spectrum. And if you see, most of the younger kids that I work with, 5, 6, 7, 8, I have seen them have the more difficult time dealing with the fact that they cannot get, one-on-one therapies and go into the classroom and into the school. So as you can see from this chart, it seems to be that the younger they are, the more severe disruptions in their progress and in their abilities to kind of adapt to the changes in the pandemic. But there is an upside to the quarantine, and I like to emphasize this a lot with the parents that I work with right now, because I think that we often see, and we're very stressed and overwhelmed with all of the difficulties that come with the pandemic and the quarantine, but there are some upsides. One would be generalizing skills that we haven't seen at home. A lot of our children might be doing things with teachers and with therapists, but they're not doing it with parents. So being able to generalize those skills at home, we have that opportunity now. They're home all day.
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. How to make a child's language more functional. And by functional, I assume that you mean that they're using the language in a meaningful way to do things that improve their life, your life, express their needs, wants, feelings, or are appropriate to the situation that they're in. So with functional language, I think sometimes we as therapists can teach language in a way that is not as functional as it needs to be. And I think we as the adults or as the therapists around need to be quite careful about whether our target is for them to be able to say things or for them to be able to use language. And sometimes we're so focused on, oh, they need to be able to speak more, they need to say more, they need to say more. But what's the point of having language that they don't really know how to use well? A lot of children that I work with have a lot of language that they can echo, repeat, sometimes say in context. But when you think, well, if they can say, good morning, everyone, how are you? But they don't greet someone or they don't say hello or bye when it's appropriate, what's the point? I'm not saying don't teach them the language, don't teach them sentences, don't let them pick up on those, they will. But we need to look at teaching them to say things in context and functionally, and rewarding them when they say things functionally. So perhaps you may want your child to tell you about their day, or to describe things when they get hurt, or to make a choice and let you know why they're crying or why they're frustrated. That's functional language. It has a real meaningful effect. If you teach the vocabulary around it first, that's important. But before a child, like if we think of a typically developing baby, before they can say, I don't want it, they'll push things away. And your child probably can do those things. But now we get to the point of sign-assisted speech, which is something that a lot of parents fight me with at the beginning, because they feel like I'm substituting language for signing or for pictures or whatever it is that they're worried about. It's not. It's structuring the child's language. So instead of them repeating a whole sentence, or, I see lots of children who will say, good afternoon, auntie, how are you? Or you ask them, what is your name? What is your name? My name is, and it's very rote, very learnt, but you know that they can't put that sentence together. With sign-assisted speech, or sometimes colourful semantics, or some sort of picture-based activity, what we're doing is we're linking the words that your child knows to the meaning behind the words. I don't know, my mum might be watching this and I don't know whether I should use this example or not. Let me just say, some people will sing along to songs and we'll hear them make up a completely new sentence that's not really the lyrics of the song, but they'll sing it in tune and you'll know what they're trying to say. That's very similar to the experience that some of our children have where they're using language. It sounds right, it's the right words, it's in the right context, but they don't know what the exact words mean. They couldn't break that sentence down or say it in another way or say it in their own words. They couldn't, because they've learned it as a chunk, and that's all it is to them, a chunk that is used appropriately in this situation. So for us, what we need to do is start to break that chunk of sounds down into meaningful words. So some children, if they're quite good with sight reading, you can write the word out and you can start to split it.
Good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, from wherever it is that you are logging on to this webinar. We're so excited to have you here. This is the third in the webinar series that the Ziba Foundation are putting out to celebrate their first anniversary. For those of you who weren't able to tune in to the first and the second webinar, this is the third one. It's going to be an amazing one as the others were. Please reach out to the Ziba Foundation to be able to get recordings of the previous sessions. Now, who's the Ziba Foundation? You're going to find out in a few minutes as we let you know who we are, but the Ziba Foundation is a non-profit organization that's been set up to provide resources for children and their families and all other individuals who are affected by autism spectrum disorder. And these resources can range from training to therapy to provision of infrastructure. Right now, you are going to find out more information, detailed information in some of the infomercials that will be played during this webinar. And so in order not to keep you waiting, because I know you are so excited to start today's session, I would like to go ahead and introduce you to our speaker today. Her name is Miss Sabra Gelfand, who was woken up pretty early this morning, all the way she's in Miami right now. And as you know, we are several hours ahead. It's about 5 over there now, and you pardon her as she tries to take you along this journey. But she's prepared and has been super excited to do this. Now, Ms. Gelfand is the Executive Director for National Speech Therapy Center here in the US. I will go ahead and provide more information about her as we go along, but she has 3 centers here where children are taking through speech and language therapy. She also has been doing this for several years. I'm also going to allow her to go ahead and share some of the information about who she is, but she's well versed in her ability to provide the necessary information that will equip you as a parent, as a teacher, as an interested auntie, uncle, grandparent, whoever you are, with regards to your experience with autism. So let's go ahead right now and have Miss Sabra Gelfand join us. Hi, Sabra.
Hi there. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Or evening. I'm actually in California, and it is 5 a.m. here. So forgive me. I'm still gathering my wits about me.
So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself before we start? I do know we
Sure.
have your bio, but it would be great just to share all the amazing things that you do. Thank you.
No problem. I have, I don't want to age myself, but I have about 35 years working with children on the spectrum, and I've worked with kids in all different ages. We are a center with multiple locations, and the services that we provide are speech therapy, occupational therapy, and ABA services, if you're familiar with those. And just a little bit about my background. I am a speech pathologist by training and sort of became an autism specialist over time. When I first started seeing children on the spectrum 30 some odd years ago, people didn't really know what autism was. And at that time, I remember telling my father, that I was working with children with autism, and he said, I didn't know you autism. I didn't know you were artistic. He thought I said artistic. I thought you were going to work with kids that had speech problems. So, back then, you couldn't really do much in autism. People really didn't know what it was. It was considered so rare. And, one of the things that people ask me frequently is about, what do I think about the increase? Because now they're saying 1 in, I believe it's been reduced to 58 or 68 children per 100 children. And, you know, part of it is there has been an increase indeed, but part of it is also people didn't know what autism was. And in the schools, at least in the United States, it was tracked as childhood schizophrenia of the autism type. So there was no category. So there was no monitoring of how many children actually have autism. And at that time, there were no programs. And I ended up meeting a few people. I don't know if anyone remembers who Bernie Rimland is, but he started something called the Autism Research Institute. And he was a researcher, and his wife was a psychologist, and he had a child with autism. And I met him at this conference, and he said, you know, at that time, people were still thinking that autism was due to something called the refrigerator mother, which was a phrase coined many, many years ago by a Dr. Bedelheim. And he had come out saying that autism was due to a separation between the mother during pregnancy and the child, and that the mother was very cold. And so Bernie Rimland came along and said, along with Leo Kanner about the same time, and said, that doesn't make sense. You know, that doesn't make sense. There's something else going on. And so he started the Autism Research Institute. And then I met Temple Grandin, actually, if you know who she is, a pretty famous person with autism, and Georgiana Stelly, and Georgiana's mother, and we talked for a long time. And so they really drew me in, and I was fascinated with their stories. And I worked at a school, it's still around, great school called the Ivy Mount School in Maryland, and started seeing a lot of kids on the autism spectrum. And then I was trained in something called ABA, which I don't know if you are familiar with what it is. One of the difficult things about presenting in a Zoom session is you don't get to see your audience, and so you don't know what they know and what they don't know. But so at that time, as a speech pathologist, I was trained to provide ABA services, applied behavior analysis. And at that time, it was very, very different than it is now. ABA was a very, very strict way of delivering services, and it's a behavior-based program. And you used something called a no-no prompt, and you were shaping the child's behavior. So what's a no-no prompt? That's if you ask a child to do something and they don't do it, you look away and you say no. And then you ask them again, and if they don't do it, you say no. And then and then on the third trial, you prompt them. Well, ABA is very different today, and it incorporates play, and it incorporates the child's natural environment, and so it's really transitioned. And I think when it first started, it had a bad reputation for giving negative reinforcement. Well, it's nothing like that anymore. And so as a speech pathologist who focuses on communication, you can really take any program and you can put it into a behavior format in order to help shape a behavior. And that's really what I want to focus on today. I want to talk about some different ways that you can shape behaviors and some different things that you can do to help initiate conversation. And one of the best ways is to use what we call visual prompts. So I am going to share my screen, and hopefully I will do this correctly. Forgive me if I take a moment. I am just not great on the computer and on technology, so I will do my best.
You're doing great.
What I want to talk about to start is developing visual schedules and visual supports. How do you do that? Where do you start from? And again, it's very difficult because I don't know your background, so I don't know where you're coming from and whether this sounds familiar to you or not. But one of the first things that we do with children that we work with, and this is great for teachers, this is great for in homes, this is a terrific way to help a child learn to communicate. We start with visuals, we start with pictures, and we start with just getting the child familiar with pictures. Now, here you can see, this is an example of a schedule, and I hope it's big enough that you can all read it and see it. And this is just an example of a schedule, but this might be a schedule that you use at home. This might be a schedule that you use at school. You can use this anywhere. And the beauty of this is whether you have technology or not, you can easily create one of these on your own. What I always suggest to parents when I'm starting out with communication is to just start by using one picture. So this is almost more advanced already. I start with using one picture. And one of the first questions that parents will ask me is, well, if you use pictures, isn't my child going to be less likely to speak? And there has been plenty of research that has shown that actually the opposite is true. And we see that in therapy every day, that as soon as you start to use pictures or signs or cued speech, and I'm going to go over what some of that means, you are more likely to engage in speech. And, you know, one of the reasons is a child, when they're first starting to learn to communicate, if you think about how a typical baby learns to understand before they express. Think about a typical child that you know. They might understand a simple direction such as come here or sit down or do you want up, you know, like to be picked up from their crib, or they might understand a gesture. You're reaching out your hands. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. You're reaching out your hands because you want to pick the child up, and then all of a sudden the baby reaches for you. And children that are on the spectrum often don't do those things. So what happens is they grow very frustrated at a very early age. And so you've got to give them a system to communicate. So what I suggest to start this out is by taking any picture, and now many people have iPhones, you can take a picture right on your iPhone. Back in the day, you used to have to take pictures and get them developed. Or another possibility is if you know your child really likes something, maybe it's a video, maybe it's juice, maybe it's milk, you know, whatever it is, you cut out a picture from the box that it's on. So it's actually a complete reflection of the picture. And I always suggest starting that by putting that picture wherever the child is going to go to get what they want. And you find a way so that they cannot get what they want without looking at the picture. So for example, let's say your child, you know, your child goes to get something from the refrigerator. I'm going to use milk as an example. You might take the picture of the milk carton and you might tape it to the picture, to the refrigerator. And when your child goes over to get milk, what you do is you take that picture and you put it in the child's hand, and the only word you say is milk. So you're already reinforcing, you're shaping the communication by taking the picture, putting it in the child's hand, and then the next step, what I also do, and you do not use a lot of words, because words, you know, if you're using a lot of words, you're just confusing the child more. So you take the picture, you put the picture in the child's hand, and hand over hand, you help your child to put that picture in your hand. Milk, and then you open the refrigerator and immediately give the child milk. If it's a video that your child wants, you immediately put the video on. And again, I would put it right on the video machine and cut out a picture of the box. If it's, you know, whatever it is, if it's a stuffed animal, take a picture of the stuffed animal, put it on a shelf that's higher so that the child can't get it, and then put the picture at the child's level where the child can see the picture. And then, you know, if it's a toy or a dog or a stuffed dog, whatever. You just take the picture hand over hand, you put it in your hand, and then you say to the child the name, just the one word. We're going to go through this more. It looks so easy, and then parents get all confused when they're supposed to do it. So I also suggest at the same time that you make a routine, because kids on the spectrum really like things. They like to know what's coming. If you think about it, when you know what is coming, it makes it so much easier. Even when you think about it, when you're going on a trip, you like to know, are you going someplace warm? Are you going someplace cold? Because you need to know what to pack. Well, your child needs to know and will feel calmer if they know what the schedule is for the day. You might just start, and I'm going to break down how we start this, with just 2 pictures. You might just start, and I'm going to show you what I call my first then board. So if you do this first, then you get that. Or you might start with an example such as the one that you see on the screen. So you have a picture. So this says, wake up, feed and water the dog, make your bed. And then each time the child does the activity, you can see over here, I think you can see my screen, that the child gets a little green check every time something's done. Well, after just a little while, the child's going to learn, okay, now I see, I go to the top red one. And they learn this over time. It's not automatic. Oh, now it's time to brush my teeth. And then you can even have the child, and again, hand over hand, put on the board the little green box so that they know it's done. You want the child to do as much as possible. What you're doing by that is you're setting up the child to have communication on their own. I hope that makes sense to you. So now let's talk about how do we make these visual schedules. It has to be a format that is very easily understood by the child. I don't care if you hand draw it. So you can see down here, I have some pictures. I hope they're large enough for you to see. You can print out a picture of something off a computer if you have that available to you. And you can do that with simple directions as well. And one of the ways that when I'm starting therapy, I like to use a lot of pictures. When we're starting with a child that's nonverbal, or when we're starting with a child that's new and we need to first get behaviors under control. The first things that I always will target is 1, behaviors. So that means if the child, I might just reinforce a child just for sitting down, at the table. And if before they were just running around the room, then I might just have a table, and I'm going to show you, I might just have a little chair. I think you can see, putting it down so you can see. I might just have a little child-sized chair and physically hand over hand put the child in the chair. And the only word that I will say is sit. And then as soon as they sit, I will reinforce the child with something that the child finds reinforcing, which is also important and something else that I want to talk about. Something is reinforcing only if it's reinforcing to the child. One person likes fruit, another person likes grapes. One person likes to go to Disney World, another person wants to hear a concert. We all like different things, and it's very important to find what the child likes, okay? What the child likes. If any of you are making comments, I just want to make sure, because I want people to feel that they can ask questions as we continue. So if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the comment bar.
This is me. The video is off because the host kind of disabled it. But I do want you to maybe use the slide view. If you can do the slide view, that way it fills up the screen. I got a comment that it's
okay, but I got to think of how to do that. I forgot.
Just doing presentations. Maybe presentation view. slideshow, maybe that one.
I don't see that. Hold on. I'm telling you, slideshow. Okay.
Is that the one? Presenter, hold on, let's make sure.
No, I'm so afraid
Oh.
I'm going to mess it up.
Well, you know what? Why don't you
View.
keep,
Hold on. View.
maybe let's try fit window. Let's see that.
It's not working, Julia.
Okay, all right, so we'll figure it out.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be. We'll figure it out. We'll just get some tips and I will just send you a quick message and we'll sort it out. This is all technology. We're all working through
Right.
this together.
And I am so bad at this, and at my office I have help.
That's
know,
okay.
So I can do it. This is me on my own, raw.
You're
And
doing
I
great.
do this, and I have forgotten.
You're doing great. Not to worry. Okay, let's keep you going ahead, okay?
Yeah. Okay. So I know I'm using the wrong view of my slide. You have to forgive me. Technology is not my thing. And usually I have so many assistants that help me with these things. And now I'm just on my own at 5 in the morning. So forgive me. I hope you can see the slide. And let me think of where I was.
Or you just click on each slide.
Yes, no, I know that. I just am trying to find my place in the presentation, what I was talking about. Okay.
Click on that one
Okay.
and see if it opens up and just fits the.
So am I still on now? Am I, forgive me.
Yes, we're all hearing you. So it's okay. We can keep going up forward. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. I can't recall how to go back to the other screen. Okay, so tips for using a visual schedule, and how to do that and how to shape behavior. So the schedule needs to be manageable. You might choose one or two things, which I think I said. Break your schedule down into chunks so that it's easier to follow. So in other words, you don't necessarily have to start with your whole day. Just start with dinner time or bath time, something like that. You need to mix preferred and non-preferred activities. So you must make sure that the things that the child likes are also part of what they're able to choose, so that you can keep your child engaged and make sure that they have something to look forward to. I know what I wanted to go back a little and just talk about what's reinforcing to a child. When I first start services with a child, and especially a child that I'm really trying to shape their behavior and get them to engage with me, I start with usually things that are edibles. It might be crackers, it might be grapes, it's whatever is, again, motivating to the child. And you often know as the parent or the caregiver or the teacher what's motivating to the child, but it must be motivating to the child in that moment. So a child might like bubbles one day, but another day they like blocks. So you really need to figure out what is most motivating to the child, and you need to make sure you're always using things. One of the things that I like to do is I like to keep a box of things handy, right next to me, but out of the child's reach, that I know the child likes. And what I also like to do is use these pictures. If we went back to these pictures, I might take these pictures and I might have a little box on the therapy table, or a lot of times I'm on the floor when I'm first starting with a child. And I put a big sign for the word finished on that box. And this is the sign for finished. And what I'll do is each time we do an activity, I'll have them put the picture in the box that says finished. And again, I do it hand over hand. So I don't just say to the child initially, put it in the finish box, because that's way too many words. I might even do it non-verbally, or I might just say the word finished and help the child put the picture in the box so that they know that activity is all done or finished. So let's continue on. So making it manageable, making sure that there are preferred activities, and making it interactive. So that might mean like the little green checks that you saw, or a sticker when they finish an activity. Or sometimes what I'll do is I'll have, 2 or 3 activities, and I might be starting with one. And after one, they get a reinforcement. It might be the child just did come here or sit down. And what I always do is I track what the child can do. So I never mix things that the child can do initially with what they can't do. I'm just asking them for what they can do, and then I'm reinforcing that. Once I know they can follow a simple direction, such as come here or sit down, then I do 2 directions. And it's the same thing with items. If I'm starting to teach the child basic vocabulary, I start with 1 word, and I ask, and it's got to be something that's motivating to the child. So I might put bubbles on the table, and I might say to the child, bubbles. And as soon as the child goes to touch the bubbles, I might open them and reinforce and say, and blow the bubbles and say the word bubbles, so that the child can start to learn. And once the child has learned the word bubbles and sees that picture of bubbles, then that's when I would introduce something else. I'm going to use a cup for an example just because I have it right here, my coffee cup. So, but again, it's going to have to be an item that's motivating to the child. And then I'll put the bubbles on the table with the coffee cup, and I'll just say bubbles. And let's say the child starts to reach their hand for the coffee cup. I would redirect their hand over to the bubbles and say bubbles. So what am I doing? I'm reinforcing the child, and I'm setting the child up for good communication, so that the child, instead of saying no because the child went for the wrong item, I'm just saying great job, because even though I redirected the child. And that, I call that a hand over hand prompt. And that's how I start. And I believe you've had sessions on ABA, and they will talk more about that. But if you have questions on it, I can go into it. So what are some of the benefits of a visual schedule? Helping ensure that your child is on task, providing clear expectations by showing structure and ensuring predictability, okay, so that again, your child knows what to expect, allowing opportunities to manage those expectations, manage the mistakes, manage the difficulties, reducing anxiety by providing consistency. And the more consistency you can give your child, whether it's in that 1 hour time period, or maybe you start working with your child to encourage speech for just 10 minutes at a time, or it might be 5 minutes at a time, short bursts of times when you're working on teaching, many bursts throughout your day. And this, again, will reduce your child's anxiety because you are teaching your child to communicate. It will also help to reduce the challenging behaviors. One of the big reasons, especially early on in communication, is that these challenging behaviors creep in often because the child is unable to express themselves. If you help the child express themselves by teaching them a core vocabulary to follow some simple directions, then what you're going to do, and using the pictures, you are going to reduce those challenging behaviors, because guess what? When the child has to, wants their milk, you're going to be able to help them so that then they can tell you, I want milk, I want a video, need to go potty, whatever it is. And you're increasing the independence of your child. Okay. One of the other things I start with is something that we call the first then board. What does that mean? That means first you do this, and that might mean a less preferred item, and then you do this, the item that you want, so that the child starts to learn that. So a lot of times when you think about it, you need to say to the child, first get dressed, then go outside. First eat your, whatever it is you want the child to eat, then get your, snack that you want. Whatever it is, and this can be for children that are 2, or this can be for older nonverbal children. It doesn't matter. So, and the first item is going to be the item that you want the child to do. The second item is going to be the item that they want. So in this example here, first we're going to practice reading. Then you get to work on your tablet. So the then item is only becomes available. It's not right in front of the child prompting them once they do the first activity. So I hope all this makes sense. Again, it's very difficult for me not hearing your questions and not seeing you. So it's very different than when we do the live presentation. Okay.
You're doing great. Okay, Sabra, we're
Yes,
following
great.
real well. Okay,
Okay,
so I want to point out to something on your screen that
Yeah.
could make the presentation. If you look down where it says notes, comments,
Yes.
and then you see that little icon that may look like a presentation, it's after the 4 dots right there. If you can point to it down at the bottom, no, at the bottom, way at the bottom. So just keep going all the way to your right there. After comments, go down, and then the dots, move further down. No, you're right there. At the bottom, you will right there, and you see the next icon, the next one, the next one, that one. Click on it.
Okay. Thank you, Julia.
Super. Oh, okay. Thank you. And we're making good on time. This is so good. Thank you so much. And I'll get out of
Great.
your way.
Okay. Okay. So, oops. Okay. So I hope you can see the whole screen because I see pictures on the side. So let me see if I can minimize that. Okay. So again, this is an example of another way to do a board. So and it's really the same thing of what's available and what's not available. And again, if you use the words frequently and you make the card, so you can see how I did this card, and I tend to do this as well. You can see that the items that are not available are on a red piece of paper. The items that are available are on a green piece of paper. That gives a very clear indication. Again, you want to break things down as much as possible. You know, if you think about it, you know, if you're going to take a shower and wash your hair, and you're going to, you know, all the steps that are involved might be, or let's use washing hands. Washing hands. So you turn on the faucet, you have to watch whether it's hot and cold. You have to put your hands under the water. There are many steps and you don't think about that. But what we want to do is we want to, in early communication stages, break everything down. So if I was doing a picture board of that, it might be first you have to teach the vocabulary about faucets and hot and cold and the concept of hot and cold and all of those different things that are associated. So again, that's why we're breaking things down, and you can use the same things throughout therapy and throughout services that you're providing. So a red board and a green board is great. And if you start that early on with a child, they start to learn over time. Okay, red means no, green means yes. You can use that for a lot of things. I use that for example, sometimes that I have, you know, a child that uses an inside voice and an outside voice. Well, if I was going to do that, I might have a little picture that I've drawn that indicates inside voice versus outside voice for a child that's screaming inappropriately a lot. And guess what? The inside voice is green And then the outside voice is red, and I might hold up a little sign. So I keep those things consistent. That might be for 3 months, or it might be for 3 years. It depends on the child and how quickly or how slowly the child's learning. And again, you can start this with a child at any age. You can start this when a child is less than 2 years old. You can use this kind of a system with a 15-year-old that's nonverbal. So just make sure you're providing clear expectations, okay? I hope that we're giving good examples.
Yeah, we are. And we have one comment because you said you'd like to keep interacting. We have
Please,
a comment that says, Miss Ruth Mohammed says, on your previous slide, I think this is the slide where you had actually handwritten, yes, she said, do this now and do this then. For my son, he won't eat unless he is playing on a device, either a phone or his laptop.
Okay, great question. What I would do is I would start, let's say that's a situation. You have to break that down into so many different things. So for example, you might just have your child eat 1 bite at the table. That's all you want to do. And again, I might even start with a first then board. First, and you might take a picture of your child taking a bite. First bite, then I think you said tablet was is that correct, Julia?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So that's a perfect example. First bite, then tablet. You might need to first isolate the child and hold the tablet back, and your child may be reaching for the tablet and reaching for the tablet. Sometimes it's really helpful, if it's possible, to have another person with your child on your lap if it's a young child, or your child seated if it's an older child. And then you have a little bit more control. And that's one of the reasons it is just the younger you can get your child started on these kinds of programs, the better. Because when your child is 2 or even 18 months old, you can control the child physically. When they get to be older or they're tantruming a lot, it's much more difficult to do that. So if I have a little child, and I don't know how old your child is, Miss Ruth, but if I have a younger child that I can physically control, that's going to be much easier. So what I might do is I might have the child, maybe I seat the child in the high chair first. And again, I wish I knew more, how old your child was, but you can ask me that later and I can speak specifically, because I want everyone to be able to have an opportunity, and I'm going to leave time to ask questions about the specific child that they're talking about.
Yeah.
But so
Did say the child was 8.
8. Okay. So 8. So they're no longer in a high chair. So what you might first have to do is just start by working to sit your child down and take 1 bite. And then as soon as they take 1 bite, you immediately reinforce them with the tablet. And then it might be hard to take that tablet away. And that goes to the next slide that I'm going to talk to, using timers. And you can see it is overwhelming when you start, because there are a lot of things to think about, but it's really not. I find that when children start with me, the first 2 weeks there's a lot of, you might even see increased tantruming or increased difficult behaviors. But the more you use these helpful tips, using timers, using a finish box, breaking things down, using a first then board, creating a visual schedule, the more you do these things, the easier it's going to be over time. So how do I use a timer? I might do this with a child because I want them to know how long they have something for. So for example, let's say, and you can see in this example with the little duck, that might be something where you might have a picture of the tablet on it. And it might only be 10 seconds until the child gets the tablet. You work to increase it over time. Before you know it, it's 10 minutes, and then it's an hour, and they understand that they've got to work before they get that object. And the same thing, I like to use a visual timer. This is something, and if you just search online, if you have that available to you, you can easily get timers, or you can make your own. Okay, a lot of these things, you know, when I first started doing therapy 35 years ago, we made all our own materials. Now, a lot of these things you can buy. But again, if you look, I'm being consistent. So if you look at this timer here, you see how it's red. And again, that's how long the child might have to wait. Okay, so again, I'm being consistent. You might use a sand timer, especially if it's a short amount of time that the child will have to wait, and the child will learn. As soon as the sand is through, you take the timer, you turn it over so that you say, you know, or you could put it in your finish box and you say, all done, so that the child can then, you know, start to understand that difference. You can also use this during transition time. So let's say you want the child to learn to share a toy, or you want the child to learn to wait or clean up. You can use something like this during those times. If the timers have a picture, it can be helpful because then the child can visually see that the time is passing. Okay. I know I don't want to use all my time. I want to talk about social stories because that's really important. And then I'm going to show you an example of a social story that we wrote. A social story is an individualized story about a specific topic or activity that provides very clear expectations of what you need to do. They can be used, they can be helpful to describe events and to manage expectations. That might mean you're doing a social story about, let's use something very timely, wearing a mask. That might be a social story about, in the example I'm going to show you, I think I used an example of a child that has a problem touching people too hard. We wanted to make a social story to help this child learn not to do that. And you use pictures in a social story of your particular child. So maybe it's getting a haircut. Maybe it's going to a doctor. Maybe it's going to school. Maybe it's playing with peers. But you're going to make a specific story. And these can take anywhere. I can make a social story in 10 minutes. Or you can spend hours on it. You know, it depends. I'm going to show you an example of the social story. So you're going to have to give me a minute while I switch presentations. Okay. So, okay. Give me just a minute. Okay. So this child that we made this social story about was about how to get attention. Okay. So, hi, I just want you to see how simple this is, and you adapt it for the child. Hi, I am 13 years old. I see lots of people during the day. I like to interact with them, but I need to remember to use nice touches. Now, if this was a younger child, I might have just been working on the concept of touch or just be working on the concept of nice. But for this particular child and this social story, this is what worked. At home, I live with my mom, dad, and my big brother. They love me very much. It's a picture of the entrance to her house, so it's familiar to the child. This is my mom. I love my mom. If I want to get my mom's attention, I can tap her with one finger on the arm, or I can say, Mom, using my talker. For this child, we used a talker. So you can see, but this child understood all of that. Sometimes the social story needs to be more simple. Sometimes it can be more complex. This is my dad and my older brother. They are boys. If I want to get their attention, I can either tap them with one finger on the arm, or I can use my talker to say their names. Nurses help me during the week. Sometimes I may have a different nurse. Whoever is working with me, I need to use a nice touch. I can tap their arm with one finger to get their attention. Now, you can see what we wanted to do was take this throughout the child's day, okay? Because, if the child, if you think about it, if the child walks up to another child and tries to get their attention by touching them too hard, what's going to happen? That other child's not going to want to play with you. So we're just working on this one concept in this social story. This is my dog. He's very cute, but sometimes he can be loud when he barks. Even if he is loud, I still need to use nice touches with him by petting him with one finger. Tapping with one finger on the arm, handshake, high five. These are different ways of using nice touches. When I use a nice touch, people will feel happy. I can continue to interact with people who I give a nice touch to by having them help me with something, play a game together, etc. Okay, so what did we do? We created a social story. We used that particular child and the people in that child's life. You have to touch your dog nicely, or the dog will run away or bite you perhaps. You have to touch people the nurses that you see, the people that are caretakers for you, whoever is in your specific day. And again, a social story might be something that you read the child to every night, every morning, or throughout the day if it's a big issue and something that really needs direct intervention. And again, I've created, like, we have stories now on how to wear a mask. And if we don't run out of time, because I know my time is running a little short, I can share that story with you as well. But I want to give time for people to talk about all these things that I've presented to you. And I want to give time for you to be able to make comments.
You're doing great on time. Keep going.
Okay, so let me see if I can, I don't know if I can grab my social story. If you'll forgive me for a minute, let me see if I can real quick. I don't see my social story for a mask, and that would take a little searching. If during the questions, if you want me to show that, I will go back and find it for you. If I have plenty of time, I can, no, this is not the one I wanted. I can talk about communication strategies a little bit more. Okay. And if I'm coming short on time, Julia, if you could please just let me know.
Will do.
Okay, because I really like to leave plenty of time for people to ask questions and talk specifically about their child. I know there's a lot of people that are on this, but there may be teachers or speech therapists or ABA folks that, want to ask some questions, and I do want to make sure that I leave time. I just want to go through a few more things. Talking about, communication, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and just talking about all the different ways of communication and thinking about how a child learns to communicate. They might be asking for something. They might be identifying something, labeling. They might be working on answering simple questions and engaging in play with a peer, or repeating something. And, that's something else I wanted to talk about, because I know a lot of kids repeat after what you're saying. That's called echolalia. I'm sure many of you have heard that term. But one of the things that I like to do with a child that echoes a lot is I like to, so let's say I say, for example, what's that? And I'm talking about a cup, and the child says, what's that, instead of cup. What I might do, a trick that I use that I've found that's very successful, is I might answer the question for the child first. So listen to how the exchange might go. I have a child in front of me. What's that? Cup. What's that? And then I pause, or I might say, what's that? And this is on the table. What's that? Cup. What's that? Say, k. And I started the word for the child. Now, one of the things that you might do is shape a behavior or a response, and that's really what that was. Shape a behavior or a response. Sometimes I teach them to repeat by using the word say cup, say phone, and then I reinforce the child for what they have said. So, reinforcing the child immediately for what they've done can really help. But I know the issue of echolalia comes up a lot, and that is typically how I deal with that and how I shape the behavior. If you have additional questions on that, please ask, because that can be a very difficult thing to address. And a lot of people just say, my child repeats. But again, the more words you give your child, and go back to using pictures and just teaching one thing at a time, those tips will really help to decrease the echolalia. Okay, and the repeating, because you're giving your child a way to express themselves. Again, the pictures work wonderfully. Okay, different forms of communication, trying to understand and think about what are the different reasons that your child is communicating, and what are the different ways that your child's communicating. It's not just verbal, it's not just speaking, it's also eye contact. Are they looking at you? And that's another thing that I wanted to bring up, is that a lot of times, children are looking away, or you think they're not looking at you. The way that I typically deal with that in therapy or throughout the day is, I don't say, look at me, unless I'm doing that as a specific program in their therapy. But when they do look at me, I say, good looking. And I might give them something, a reinforcement. And remember, a reinforcement is only reinforcing if it's reinforcing to the child. For one child, it's a hug. For another child, it's being picked up. For another child, it's a high five. And again, you might not be able to pick up a 10-year-old, but you can pick up a 2-year-old. So every time that they look, and all throughout the day, and what I like to do is share the things that I'm working on with as many people as possible in the child's life. So who is that? Maybe the mom, maybe the dad, maybe the caretaker, maybe the teacher, maybe a friend, maybe an older sibling. Even an older sibling or even a younger sibling can say, good looking, and give a high five or something like that. So the more that you can carry out the things that you're working on. And when I first start working with a child, I try to work on just a few things at a time so that I'm not overwhelming the child, but I reinforce those concepts all throughout the day. So let's say I'm working on teaching colors. Okay, I might start that by, at the table during table time, I'm doing a very concrete and direct program. Red, and I have a big red piece of paper on the table, and that's the only thing I have on the table. So the child can't get it wrong, because I've already taught the child touch or give or whatever it is I'm going to have the child do. So, but what else would I do? I would ask the family to try to dress the child in red that week. Maybe it's a day, maybe it's a week. I don't know how long it is. It depends on how quickly the child learns. I might buy a red water gun for the child. I might have red balloons and hold up the red balloon. So in other words, I bombard the child with those things. Then when I introduce another color, I would intersperse and I would go back to using red, but then I would focus on blue. Then I would focus only on red and blue. So in other words, you might give them the red drink that day. You might play with red crayons. You might use red finger paints and have the child do a red picture. Anything you can to reinforce red. So it's not just while the child's sitting at the table. And that's why it's really important to have everyone that you can involved working with your child so that you're all on the same page. Narrow down what you're working on when you're first starting. Work on one item at once, work on 3 items at once, depending on the child. Work on 10 items. It depends on the child, how many items and what level the child is at. Some people think that if you're using an AAC device, and by the way, low-tech AAC is just those pictures. That's a low-tech AAC device. But now iPads, if you can get an iPad, have so many great programs that you can use. And if people need, we can send a list, but I know like Proloquo to go, you know, and these are often things that are very inexpensive that you can just download. It used to be when I was working in schools or working privately with a child, it used to take so long to prepare these things and they were so complex. Now an iPad can program something or, you know, in just a very, very short time period, you can get lots of pictures and things. But the low tech of that is PECS is actually a specific set of pictures. I like to start with real pictures, but PECS are pictures that are sort of pre-made. And again, you can download them now. You can also use, I call it cued sign language. You know, simple signs like before when I did, you know, finished or come here or, you know, want or more. And I do want to speak about the word more. One of the biggest things I find is especially when people are starting therapy, they teach the child the concept of more. And I never do that. And I'll tell you why. Because then the child thinks that more goes for everything and that it means cup and it means phone or whatever else you're looking for. So I do not start with the concept of more. I start with teaching core vocabulary. I start with just comprehension. I start with just getting the child to follow simple directions, you know, and again, it's at the child's level. If a child can follow single step directions, then, you know, I work on 2-step directions, but I only combine 2-step directions for things that I know the child can do. If I know, and I use examples a lot with young children, but this can be for older children as well. But if I want to do, you know, get your diaper and come here or bring it or touch it, then I only would do that 2-step direction if I knew the child knew the word diaper already. And it was because I taught that to the child in their program, or if you're the parent, sometimes you know what the child does. Okay.
So we've got 2 questions waiting. Do you want to tackle them now?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, what I'd like to do is take questions because I don't know, you know, whether people are therapists or whether they're parents. I want people to be able to ask questions so that this is specific to them. So yes, please answer your questions. I'm going to stop my screen share.
So we'll take these 2 questions and then we're going to take some videos from our sponsors and just some more information about the Zeba Foundation,
Okay.
just so we can get to know who we are and,
Yes.
and what we're able to provide as well. Okay.
Yes.
So right here, Miss Ruth also provided another question. I'm putting up my chat.
Oh, Ruth. Yes.
She says, my son learned how to say yes and no to preferred and non-preferred items respectively, but has since started using yes for everything he's asked. He can say yes to anything he's asked, whether he wants it or not. So his default answer is yes.
Yes. Okay. So great question. And if I say something and you want to follow up, please do. What I would do is start, first of all, you can use pictures of yes and no, or I don't know, because I'm assuming, so I think what you're saying, and if I'm wrong, please write in the chat box. I think what you're saying is anytime you ask your child a question, do you want to go upstairs? They say yes. He says yes, even if he wants to stay downstairs. So what I would do is maybe a couple of things. You can use, and you can make your own very easily. You can use a little like sign that says yes and no. You can mount it on popsicle sticks. And what I would do is I would offer your child also things that you know he does not want. So you're sitting at the table, for example. Do you want broccoli? And you know your child hates broccoli. And you have broccoli on the child's plate. I would say, want broccoli? And hold up the symbol for no. I often draw like a little face, only because you can use more advanced pictures and fancy pictures, like you saw some nicer ones in the presentation. But if I'm in therapy, I don't always know what I need in that moment. So, if I need something real quick, I'm notorious for, turning around and drawing a quick picture. But for this, I would have a picture of no, and I might just make a face, 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth in a circle. And I might put a big red X through it, and under I write the word no. So I don't know if your child reads or doesn't read, doesn't matter. They'll start to recognize the word no. And I would offer your child things your child does not want. Want broccoli? No. And I would hand over hand help your child touch the picture of no. And then I might wait, and then I might do that a couple of times. And then I might ask something that I know the child does want. Want ice cream? Yes. And then I would hold up the picture of yes. And I might even sometimes, almost a little sly, like, I'll hold up the yes in right in front of the child's face, and I'll hold the no one back here. What am I really doing? I'm prompting the correct response. So, and again, when I first start, or if it's a young child, or, I might have 2 people. It can really help to have 2 people. Like I often have the parent sitting in the room with me, and, the parent, you have to be very specific about what that person, that second person, should or shouldn't be doing, because a lot of times, I'll say something like, want a simple thing, want juice, whatever it is. And then, the parent will be sitting there because the child hasn't responded yet and say, do you want juice? Do you want juice? Let's give you some juice. Here's the juice. And it's right next to the child. And you really want to minimize the second person's responses, but you might use that second person as a reinforcer. So what does that mean? I might say, ask the child to do a single step direction, and then know that was so hard to elicit. It was so hard for me to get that child to follow that one direction. It might be, again, I'll use a simple example of sit down. Okay, sit down in the chair, whatever it is, because I want the child to follow simple single step directions, because that your child's going to need to follow simple single step directions. Child can't go to school and be running around when all the other kids are, sitting down. They have to understand the concept. So again, I might hold up a picture of sit down. I might be physically prompting the child to sit down. And again, that's why I like to start working with the kids as young as possible so that I can physically control it. But I help the child sit down, and then, and only then, do I have the parent stand up. Okay, so maybe the child's tantruming, doesn't want to sit down, screaming, could be anything. Sometimes I have little ones that, they cry, it breaks your heart, and I just ignore it. And sometimes what the ignoring does is it escalates the behavior. They go on and cry more and more. It's very difficult to sit there for the parent, and it's very difficult, by the way, for the teacher or the therapist too. But then when the child finally sits down, and again, I might have helped the child physically sit down, then the reinforcer might be that mom stands up or dad stands up or older sibling stands up and gives a hug or does a high five. There have been times, I had one child many years ago in my salad days when I think I stood on my head, like whatever it was that reinforced the child, bubbles, getting the parent involved, anything like that. So I hope I answered your question, Ruth, but feel free to continue to write in that chat box. That's why we have it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And just hearing from Ruth, who's a parent, just reminds us of what the Ziba Foundation will do, knowing that this is all a virtual world that we're living in, providing teletherapy. We're going to make sure we emphasize parent-driven targets, because we want to make sure that what we're working on, in our sessions has to do what will be beneficial for the parents at home. So thank you so much, Ms. Mohammed. We have another question.
We can even talk, Dr. I'm sorry, I always call you Dr. Yes, Dr. Julia. But we can even talk about how to do some of that if
yes,
you all.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, next question.
So we're going to take the second question, and this is not the last because we've got some from Facebook. We've got a lot of questions coming in, and so please don't go away. But after this question, we'll take a little break and we'll come right back to answer the rest of them. So this question says, what apps do you recommend that would help with the concept of PECS on the iPad?
Okay, so I'd have to look at what the current best apps are. But I can do that, and I can send you, I have a list of them that we can send to, and I can send it to the Ziba, and if you want to use that or post it. I know a lot of people in our offices use Proloquo, even because I think they have PicSims built in. I haven't used
Proloquo.
Proloquo, I think it's called. But I know we have lists, and I can access a list.
And for those of us who don't know what PECS is, it's Picture Exchange Communication.
Picture exchange, yeah. And again, I like to start with PECS are at least, and they're basically black and white universal symbols of what something might be. When I first start, you can use PECS or you can use real pictures. And again, if I'm first starting, I really like to cut things right off the box so that it's the exact thing. And whether that's a juice box or, or any toy that your child prefers, which is a great way to introduce PicSims, or PECS. You might take the box that the toy came in, cut the picture of the box, and it's very easy to do that way.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. And we're going to take a break at this time to share some information about the Ziba Foundation. Please don't go away. We have so many questions, and somebody has just posted Proloquo for iPad. Thank you so much for doing that, Miss Osime. All right, let's go ahead with our videos and keep us company as we continue with our Q&A. Thank you.
an ambassador for the Zebra Foundation, I want to wish them a huge congratulations on their 1-year anniversary. I am so proud as DJ Cuppy to be part of their amazing initiative, helping children along the autism spectrum. I personally have been able to visit their center in Abuja, and I'm so proud of what they're doing, but I know there's more work to do. So many children across the country, Nigeria, are affected by autism, and this is a place they can go for help, for advice, and for support, and feel part of a community. I personally have a brother, Fewa, who's part of the autism spectrum, and I know how important it is to just have that support and that information. So I want to thank the Zebra Foundation team and the founder as well, and the amazing staff and consultants and support system behind them. Thank you so much, and I pray that there's many more years to come. Congratulations.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone who's congratulated us. We're super excited about how far we've come at the Zebra Foundation. I want you to please know that the training that we receive, in addition to all these webinars and every other trainings that are given to our staff, make them one of the most equipped to handle children on the spectrum from ages 2 all the way to 16. So feel free to give us a call and find out if we can have you get helped in that way. So let's go ahead with our next question. And this question was sent in, and I will just pull it up right here very quickly. And it says, in trying to get our child to greet good morning, the prompt is to say greet. He, however, opens his greeting by repeating the words greet. So that's the echolalia we were talking about. And then proceeds to say good morning in the same sentence. Challenge is how to fade out the greet part. This is a parent, Mr.
Right.
Mohammed.
Right. Well, first of all, the more vocabulary, the greater the vocabulary your child has, the less likely he's going to do that. But rather than just do it that, I might make a program out of it, meaning I specifically focus on it when I'm working individually with the child. And I might do something like I use the example say before. And if you remember when I showed you what I did with echolalia, what's that? Cup. What's that? And I don't, that's where I stop and I pause and I intentionally don't say anything because I've said, and sometimes I even do like to give a visual symbol to say cup. I might do a program where I'm repeating, teaching the child to repeat. Say cup, say phone, say watch, and you hold up the objects individually. And then you're teaching the child to repeat, okay? Because that's a program. And then later on, that becomes say good morning. Maybe it becomes say good morning, say, and then I pause and I wait for the child to respond. So, one of the most difficult things in teaching people early on, whether that might be a young therapist even, is talk less. So don't focus on all the words and on using a lot of words. Talk less. So I'm going to do it again for you. I do a program, say cup, say ruler, say, whatever the vocabulary is in the child's world. And then as the child learns to repeat more and more words, you're going to take away the holding it up. Then it might just become holding the object up. The next version of that might be say cup, And do you hear how even I say it? And I just do this naturally in therapy because I've been doing it so long. But at first you have to really think about it. So you do this. I do little things to cue the child. Say cup. And do you hear my voice? When I say the word say, it's much softer than when I'm trying to get the child to repeat. But really, I've taught the child to repeat. And then I take that into a verbal thing. Maybe I start, instead of then using the objects, maybe I then just use a picture. And I have a picture of the cup. Cup is just an example. It's whatever vocabulary is important to your child. That's what you're going to be using. So that's probably what I would do for that. You might have to experiment a little. You know, there's no one set way to do anything. Just like when I spoke about reinforcers and how it's got to be reinforcing, whatever you're using must be reinforcing to the child in any given moment. If today the child doesn't want the pink juice and normally the child loves the pink juice, today the child wants, Cheerios. And again, I'll do things like I might just give one Cheerio at a time if that's what's reinforcing to the child on that day. Or maybe maybe we've used a timer, maybe we've used a picture board, and the child needed to do 3 things in order to get the Cheerios. And then the Cheerios go on the table. So all done, they've done the 3 things, put it in the finish box. Great, good job. And then you put the Cheerios in front. I hope that answered the question.
Well, thank you very much. It's a huge problem with, therapy, and verbal behavior is one of those things that the Ziba Foundation therapists tend to work on. My suggestion also is to us as parents that when you recognize that this is a problem, you need to speak with your therapist. They may take an approach where they take a step back in the program. And, instead of moving, because, by using the word program, there are steps, building blocks to be able to help a child advance in their communication skills. So if you've hit a roadblock with this, it might be worth the while to take a step back and almost reteach the previous step to be able to fade. I can see this parent is very advanced and very aware of the language. So he's saying, how do we fade a particular portion? So we may have to take a step back to address that issue.
Explain to me, I'm sorry, when you say how do you fade?
Yes, that's what he said. How do you fade the greet part of it? How do you fade?
Again, I would take a step back, just like you said. Yeah, take a step back. You might have to work on some earlier skills for the child. Yeah.
Yeah, and just go back and then be able to move on.
Yeah.
And it looks like we're not going away from this echolalia question because it's coming up again on Facebook.
You know what? It does all the time. I'm used to that. So please, what is the next
question? So it says, how do you help a child with functional echolalia?
Okay, so I'd love the parent to tell me what they mean by functional.
Right.
When they functional echolalia.
Okay.
Maybe because your thought what you mean and what I mean might be 2 different things. So I'd like to hear from that parent before answering what they mean about functional echolalia.
We'll see if we get the feedback from Facebook.
When it serves a function to the child, that's what I would think you're asking, but I want to make sure we're using the same vocabulary.
Yeah, so some of the things that someone might be thinking would be a child that does this is part of their conversation. So, I mean, while I'm talking to you, you're speaking to me, I'm constantly repeating everything you say.
Okay. Again, you might have to go back to earlier programs, and you might have to really make it a focus, because a lot of kids do that. That's why I'm telling you, if I've been asked this question thousands of times, it's a big thing. But again, I like to work on fading it. Look, you have to understand too, the child might be using the echolalia as it might serve a particular function for that child he wants something? Is he requesting something? Is he commenting on something? Is he trying to gain attention? So that might go to you first figuring out, and that's, I don't want to get into a whole nother area, but that's sort of analyzing. And I think you have someone presenting on that, so, you know, but figuring out, and this is what a lot of times, I mean, I'll do this, or a behavior specialist will do this, you know, a functional analysis of why the child is using the echolalia, because it can serve many different purposes. So again, it might be the child's trying to gain attention, or the child wants to, you know, get something, or maybe just, you know, is making a comment. So again, you really have to look at, why is the child using their echolalia? And if you can figure that out, that might help you figure out how you want to address it. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. And one comment would be to us, to the therapists and the educators, to try to avoid this ab initio, because it is quite it takes a bit of time to correct sometimes. Not impossible, not impossible, but you really want to be very careful while you are starting a child fresh off with conversation. And like you said, someone will be addressing this in the next webinar as well.
And the more vocabulary that your child has, sometimes you think you have to work on a specific behavior, echolalia, crying, you know, look at me, whatever it is. But actually, indirectly, when you are working on other things like expanding your child's vocabulary, getting them to be able to follow directions, respond to a question, teaching new concepts, whatever it is, the more you do that, the less likely your child might have a need for the echolalia. So it's going to decrease on its own just by working on other things. See, you think you always have to work on that thing that you've targeted, but by working on other things, you are actually indirectly working on the echolalia, or the, you know, so by ignoring the crying, you're actually working on, or tantruming, you're actually working on decreasing the crying and tantruming by ignoring it while you're working on other activities.
Oh, that's a great point. Okay, to see echolalia as more or less a behavior to fade, yes, and that way you try to work on other things. Okay, great.
So I know that we have to conclude my portion of the presentation. I think I've used all my time, but
no, you haven't. We have a few more questions.
Okay. Okay.
We have a few more. So
I don't want to run over. I know. I think we said an hour and a half, and I don't want to run over and run into your next presentation.
You're okay.
That.
We don't have any, you're it today. You're the star today.
Okay. Great.
And thank you for doing this, by the way. It's been good. Okay, so someone has a question about how to be able to teach nonverbal children effectively. Well, that we've been trying to do all day, but I think maybe some key tips. You know, when a child is nonverbal, you've actually gone through some of those things. And there's a question about stages of communication in nonverbal children.
Okay, so all of these things that we did today can work for nonverbal children. So break things down, teach one thing at a time to start. Cup, bath, shirt, red. Usually it's a hard object, not more, because then they do more for everything. Use pictures. Start with one picture to one word. So you put one thing on the table in front of the child, or on the floor, or on the high chair, or wherever you are working with that child. It could be glasses. It has to be something that's functional for that child. And you prompt by doing hand over hand. Okay, I don't care. I start with single step directions. Remember what we started with today. You work on just comprehension first, And then you work on expression after that. Once a child understands a concept, that might mean a noun, or, you know, just a cup or a diaper, whatever, you know, whatever it is, book, then you move that into expression. And by expression, I don't only mean verbal. It could be pointing to pictures. It could be using a voice output system. But you start with teach that one thing and have that one thing carried out through your day. So, you know, focus and break things down into very simple steps. Lots of bursts of short teaching, if that's possible. It's not always possible, but I'll tell you how it's possible if you have the parents doing it at home. And again, there could be 7 other family members. They could all be engaged. Guess what? Then they're all doing, you know, working with the child on that one concept. It doesn't matter how many people are involved. The more the merrier. But just work on one thing to start, or work on 3 things to start. Use the visual board, use the pictures, hand over hand, all the things that we went through today. Use the first then so that they can get that concept. Those are the ways I would start with a child that's nonverbal.
Yeah, okay, great. And then we have a question on technology because this is our reality now.
Yeah.
And it's, what are your thoughts about enhancing knowledge? This is probably a therapist or it's a parent or caregiver, effective use of technology for distance learning. So, you know, our theme is the parent, the teacher, and the pandemic. And this is why we're now using
And
a lot
that's
of our
why,
technology.
I really, and I can send you, I don't know if you email people or how you communicate, but the story that we did on wearing a mask. And we also did a short video on wearing a mask. We used the puppet lamb chop. You know, I don't know if you remember who that, but we used a puppet and a person to do that. But, you know, I would say that for some kids, it's great. For a lot of families, it's family coaching. Now, with a younger child, that's the best way to do it anyway, because you're really teaching. Look, if your child is with a therapist for an hour a week or 2 hours a week, right? How many hours a day are they with you or with their teacher? So you know, that's why everything's got to be worked on in everybody has to be on the same page on the child's learning program. But you can do a lot of that through technology. I mean, we're doing a lot of these Zoom calls and doing teletherapy every single day. And, you know, in a sideways benefit of that is what you're really doing is you're really teaching the parent to be the caregiver, and they are with the child more than anyone else. So it's great that you're doing that. And I think it's fantastic. I think technology works great.
Okay. Are there any downsides to it that you have noticed that, you know?
It's more difficult to control behaviors and to do some of the, you know, you really have to put the parent through a lot of training, but we do a lot of coaching. It depends if my focus honestly is ABA, or if my focus is speech, or if my focus is whatever my focus is. And it depends on the behaviors of the child. So some families, it's much easier to work with on the, you know, through teletherapy. And I actually feel like there are some benefits that you don't get. You know, you're really working more, doing training and coaching and teaching. And I love that. Some kids, it is more difficult, especially if they're having some of those increased behaviors escalating, which can be very difficult because you really have to teach whoever's with the child to do things like planned ignoring of an activity or, you know, of a behavior or something like that. Yeah. But, you know, so yeah, there are downsides, but there are also upsides.
Yeah. I think you just answered the one of the questions that we had that said, can every skill be taught through online therapy?
Again, I think that's very specific to the child.
Mhm.
So it can, in the sense, listen, sometimes when I have parents that start right away, they get it and it's so easy for them and it's so fast. Other parents have a totally different approach and it takes so much longer. And it's the same with the kids. Some kids learn much faster. One of the beauties of doing very structured programs when you're starting with a child is that you can see a child go from a lot of tantruming to some, verbal speech and following directions and decrease in tantruming the minute, 5 minutes after you've started. I'm exaggerating, but, within a few weeks. So what will typically happen, and you should really talk to your therapist about this because they'll know this, and this I think would be very comforting for a family. So they start out in therapy and you have this child that walks in and they're jumping on the table and they're running around and they're screaming and that's all they're doing. And then a month later, you haven't worked on any of those behaviors and all those behaviors have disappeared because you've given the child a simple communication system, and you've taught the child yes and no or what the child's able to do. So I do think those things can happen very quickly. I hope I answered that question. I think I did.
I mean, I'm definitely seeing that, this is the year of the parent.
Yeah.
Because even
Yeah.
typical kids
Yes.
who are not on the spectrum, parents are having to do more.
Yeah.
And across the board, I would say, even though we're talking about the frontline heroes and the healthcare workers and all showering praises, I really think the world should turn around and shower praises on all parents, and specifically to parents with kids on the spectrum.
Absolutely.
Yes. So there's a lot of training that needs to go into this, and we salute all the parents who are taking the extra time to attend this webinar. To get more information and to have more resources to help with your children at home. But feel free to reach out to the Ziba Foundation if you have questions after this. Thank you for the questions that you've given. We also have, something else that has come in. I think the Mohammeds are going to get a prize today for being, super active. And thank you. Your questions are amazing and helping all of us too. It says, my son has sort of grown bored with teletherapy, and most times recently just sits there and is non-compliant for several minutes because he knows at some point it will be over and he has to be let go. We have had to always work on getting to refocus by giving him simple tasks he likes to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, by working on other things, or maybe what you need to do is use the timer that I talked about before, like the sand clock, or use a first then board, first work, then provide a reinforcer. And I don't know how old your child is or what your child likes or doesn't like, but I would say your child might have to earn reinforcers, and you might work. So if your child typically pays attention for 5 minutes, I'd make the session 4 minutes, so that again, you're setting your child up for success. I always want to set up a child for success, just like in the beginning when I'm doing hand over hand prompting, physical prompting. What I'm doing is setting the child up for success. If the child sits for 5 minutes and pays attention, I'll do it for 4 minutes. And I'll set the timer for 4 minutes. And I have that right there on the table. If the child works for 4 minutes, they get, maybe it's 5 minutes or 4 minutes, an equal amount of time, or maybe it's 2 minutes of holding their tablet and playing, that sort of thing. So that's what I would do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So the timer. I hope that has been helpful, Mr. and Mrs. Mohammed. Thank you so much for your questions. Thank you for everyone else who supplied comments and questions. It has been an amazing, amazing session. Thank you so much, Ms. Gelfand. This has been great. Please, ladies and gentlemen, just know that we have the final session next week, same time. It's going to be a panel of discussions, some moms who will be sitting down to talk about some of the issues, and there'll also be an avenue for us to discuss several of these questions, because on that panel, we have a board certified behavior analyst. We also have a mom who is a clinical pharmacologist, but she will be also answering questions mostly as a mom and her experiences. And then I will be moderating as well. Okay, thank you very, very much for your participation today. Please hold on for some of our videos about more information about the Zeba Foundation. Thank you, Ms. Galfond. You've been amazing. You've been
Thank
such a
you for
trooper. I see the sun has risen over
Yes.
by where you are.
Right. Thank you,
Yes.
everyone, for having me. And I want to wish you all the best. And I hope you found this helpful.
Thank you.